Welcome to Lawline with your host, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman is a distinguished trial attorney, author, and lecturer. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law today. And now we introduce our guest and our host, Alan Schnorman.
Welcome to Lawline. The expression "life imitates art" can have no greater parallel than the highly publicized breakup of Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. This event, following closely behind Joan London's marital difficulties, captured the public and media's attention. Marriage and divorce in the 90s, especially if you are a well-known person, has become a complicated process. Today we'll talk about celebrity divorce with noted matrimonial attorney Raoul Felder, who has handled numerous divorces of this kind. Hello, Raoul.
Hello, Alan.
Well, tell us, what are the issues between Mia Farrow and Woody Allen?
Well, the issue is not the issue, because if you look at the legal papers, there's only one thing before the courts, and that's a custody case, Woody Allen seeking custody of 3 children. It has nothing to do with the price of beans. As it unravels, we understand really what happened here. Woody Allen saw the train about to come down the track, which was accusation of child abuse, and his relationship with this girl, 18, 21, nobody seems to know her real age. So this genius sat back and thought he's plotting a movie and had an idea, apparently. I'm going to sue her for custody, and that's going to deflect everything. Then we'll settle the custody thing, and everything will go by the boards, and nobody's going to know about Sun Yat-sen or whatever her name is. At any rate, what happened, all the plans went awry, if you recall, because on Thursday or Friday, this feisty grandmother now, that's Mia Farrow's mother, an 81-year-old woman, blew it to the press, and it all started to become undone. And then Woody Allen made this ridiculous press conference, and he said, "I'm in love with the adult daughter of Miss Farrow, like it's not the sister of his own children, and Mia Farrow is not effectively the mother of these children, and the woman he's had a relationship with for 12 years, and so forth." The interesting thing to me, and then I said another thing, which, by the way, would be of interest to you as a lawyer and your viewers. He made it seem as if in all these divorce cases that people make false claims of child abuse. And now it's been picked up on the street, and everybody says, "Oh, you know, and all this is the latest thing in town." Nothing is further than the truth. The last study done showed in 3% of the divorce cases, this claim is made of child abuse. They think it may be a little higher since the last study, 5%. Not a significant percentage. Of more significance is the ABA did a study, and a woman by the name of Fallett wrote a book proving that the incidence of false claims of child abuse is no greater in divorce cases than the incidence of false claims otherwise, as somebody goes to a doctor or so forth. So it was all baloney. This was Woody Allen's baloney. That, in that respect, a lot of people have bought. But the interesting thing is, you know, a lot of time has passed now since that claim of child abuse. We have not heard a report where Woody Allen was cleared of child abuse. And methinks that if he was, you'd hear it all over the Western world. Somehow it would leak out because it clears his name and so forth. Many of these claims come back unfounded. They don't say the man didn't do it. They say unfounded. You and I have heard nothing about any claim coming back in any way exonerating Woody Allen. So one gets more suspicious as time goes on.
Well, do you think he was trying to manipulate the public opinion?
Oh, no question about it. No question about it. Even this ridiculous press conference where he shows up in the rumpled shirt and everything, and I think what he's basically saying, to hell with all of you. I have one law, you have another. He said in the New York Times interview, the mind or the heart does what the heart wants. The heart gets, or the heart does what the heart wants. I would think he's talking about a different part of the anatomy, actually. But I believe he certainly tried to manipulate it. He had some amateurish idea that this was a movie and he could script it out, and it didn't work.
Now, Mia Farrow is countering and saying that she wants to break the adoption. Now, the 2 of the children are his adopted children.
Yes.
Now she wants to break that?
Now, you know, Woody Allen was very careful in all the statements. This affair began on a certain date in December. Well, it turned out that that date just happened to be the date after the adoption took place. that date may have been chosen, I suspect, because there could be more criminal ramifications. Don't forget, nobody seems to know exactly how old this girl was.
When he started having the affair with her?
Yes, because she was picked up in a Korean street without teeth and lice and rickets and so forth. And her age is at best an estimate, so of course, there could raise questions if she was underage.
Statutory rape.
Of course.
Under 17.
So I originally thought that when I saw the date, that's what he had in mind, because it seemed to me too studied a date. But I think he had in mind the adoption he was concerned about. And I would be concerned too. For one thing, is I know of no other case where an unmarried couple adopted in such a manner in New York State. We know you could have single-parent adoptions. You know you could have homosexual couples adopt today. But bear in mind, this was a couple that didn't even live together, and yet they adopted. That judge, if there was an affair going on with one of the children besides, I doubt that judge would have signed the adoption papers. I mean, as it is, the judge sort of extended this doctrine logically, but I don't know that she would have signed that paper if
Of course, the child he was having the affair with, the young lady, wasn't one of the children that he was adopting.
No, there's no question about it.
He was adopting two younger children.
But I understand, yes, there's no question about it. But one of the children who he's claimed to have sexually abused, or it's alleged, they say, I think was one of the adopted children. I'm not sure about it, but I believe so. No, but I would think that there's still a question of moral turpitude. It's a sort of moral incest, if nothing else. I mean, legally, you could make his element.
Because he still was a father figure to the child.
Look, he picked this for 12 years. I mean, this was a child. He was a father figure in the household, father figure. He exploited this child to whatever degree. I've been in programs with psychologists, psychiatrists. And one thing they're all uniform about is that he certainly was a father figure. And while it doesn't fit into a legal definition of incest, there's a kind of moral incest quality about it, which also, and this perhaps is one of the better parts of this, suggests that we have to reevaluate and look at these statutes again as to what is incest and adoption and stuff like that.
It's obvious to me that you don't agree with his legal strategy to date. If you were representing him, what would you do differently?
I would have told him he has to end this affair immediately. I would have been contrite, and I would have made my peace with Mia Farrow.
To the tune of $6 million?
Oh, I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe that for a minute. I think this is more of the gospel according to Woody Allen. I think what happens is that lawyers sit around the table and they say, well, these children have to be supported, and they start doing quicker. Well, what are you asking for? They start doing quick arithmetic, and somebody may have said $6 million when they wanted $45. It's a negotiation process. But it was attractive. I think he artfully crafted what he said, but it was aimed at somebody who really didn't want to dissect it and think about it. So it was effective when done, but it just falls apart. Lawyers are not in the blackmail business, as you know. In fact, anything with child abuse and so forth, lawyers are very careful with. And his other things were simply untrue. I mean, he heaped a lot of abuse on lawyers' tactics and custody cases, but this is Woody Allen's head. This is not in the real world.
Isn't Mia Farrow also trying the case in the press?
Well, I think she has no choice at some point. This is not to suggest that the whole arrangement was, there were not two coconuts. I mean, this whole business was crazy, the kind of life. But, for instance, I spoke to a man who wrote a book some time back about Mia Farrow, and he said, the one thing that runs, and he wasn't an apologist for her, he had written a book for some years, he said, she's not venal. She didn't take money from Frank Sinatra, she didn't take money from Andre Previn, and so forth. She has this sort of abnormal mothering instinct, like mother to the world. She adopted a blind child and a child of some other ailment of some sort.
I think they have, a number of children. How many children? Nine children.
9 children. And 1 natural child. They have 2 adopted, 1 natural, I believe, and 9 altogether, or 11 or something like that. So I think she was forced into this situation to some degree.
So if there was a crystal ball here, what do you think is going to be the outcome?
Oh, I think it'll die with a whimper, not a bang. I think they have a very fine judge there, this Phyllis Gangel Jacobs, who has already sensibly put a lid on things, and I think they'll resolve it. But
they'll settle it.
They'll settle it, but the questions for both the people, but certainly for Woody Allen, will linger. I don't think I think Woody Allen's career is finished, frankly. I think he's going to get freak appeal on this current movie, Husbands and Wives. Although there may be picketing, I suppose some groups will picket it, but there may be freak appeal. But there's certain things that don't play well with the American public. The oldest taboo is incest. And even though this is a moral incest, so I think he's going to have trouble raising money for the movies, finding exhibitors for the movies. I think he could take his career and send it to Roman Polanski in Poland. We've historically, except for Errol Flynn, which was a sort of strange thing and sort of fitted in with Errol Flynn's image. Now, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Errol Flynn was accused of statutory rape. He was acquitted, and his career went on to bigger and better heights. But he was a sort of devil-may-care fellow, and the lady was underage, but she looked like she was 40 years old. I mean, but you take Charlie Chaplin, Fatty Arbuckle, Roman Polanski, so forth. These people's careers were effectively finished by getting involved in this kind of thing, and none of them were involved with anything as bad as this. It just doesn't play well, and it's upsetting.
Let's go to the Joan London case.
Yes.
What's the story on that?
Well, Joan London, you have a case here where turnabout, I guess, is fair play. She has a husband who claims that he helped her in a career and so forth.
Producer.
And now he wants support. Now, of course, this is entirely predictable. Since 1976, the Supreme Court says what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or rather what's good for the gander is good for the goose, I guess, in this case. And so support was predictable. Her mistake, I believe, was she was very passionate, and she uttered this terrible comment that why doesn't he go out and work, which is, of course, what every husband says when a wife is trying to get support. And I said, my own guess is she made a mistake. I have been involved in similar situations. And my advice to the clients, when they're well-known people, will pay the $2.
Well, I think in this case he's getting $18,000 a month or something?
Well, but she's making $2 million a month, whatever, some ridiculous figure. And on the face of it, it's not like he was driving a truck and said, I built your career. He apparently was a producer on the show, and there's some color of justification. And I suppose he's entitled to something, but it got out of hand. And it seems to me it was structured in such a way to embarrass her. And you got to be sympathetic to this woman. Here's a woman who appears on the air every single day, 5 days out of the week, in a sort of a middle America show, thought very well of people, and everybody looking at her has to know her business now. It must be a terribly embarrassing thing. She looks like a sensitive person, and they played that string to the best that they could, and they humiliated her to some degree.
So if you were representing her, what would your advice be?
Pay the $2.
Pay, settle.
Pay the $2 because there's no win. I mean, even if you win, everybody has to know your personal life and that you're involved in this. And she seems like a very elegant, sensitive lady. It's a question of sitting down and overpaying, perhaps.
And if you were representing the husband, would you keep the pressure up?
Not this way, because I think there's children involved here, too.
There's three children.
And it's not my style, but there's nothing wrong with somebody doing it. Not my style to humiliate that way. And these kids have to go to school and know about all this.
Now, you represent celebrities as a matter of course. Is it any different?
Not solely celebrities, but we represent all
a good number.
Yes.
Tell me about the difference. There must be in representing somebody very, very well known as opposed to.
Fitzgerald said the rich are not like you and me. Celebrities are not like you and me in several senses. They don't take direction because they're surrounded by sycophants. And you're not serving them well if you don't speak frankly to them. They never have anybody say to them, listen, sit down, you're acting like a schmuck. Nobody will say that to them. And you have to say it at times. They come up with these ridiculous scenarios, like a Woody Allen case. I don't believe anybody sat down with Woody Allen and said, listen, you don't know what you're doing, you're not directing a movie now. They're different in that respect. They also, there's a paranoia about celebrities. They think everybody's taking advantage of them. On the other hand, they think everybody's interested in their personal affairs. They're difficult, childish people often to represent. Some of them are lovely, but mostly they're childish, self-indulgent, exhibitionist types.
We have to take a break now, but I'm going to ask you, are you on call 24 hours a day for these celebrities? You're watching Lawline. I'm Alan Schnorman, your host. Stay with us.
Every year, thousands of babies die from choking, suffocating, or other breathing emergencies. Just imagine how many of them could be saved if only they came with instructions. Please learn American Red Cross Infant and Child CPR. American Red Cross. We help you help others.
I was going to take a job with an engineering firm in New York. I got a better offer. I'm building schools overseas with the Peace Corps. The pace is a little slower than New York, but here I'm getting grassroots experience I couldn't get anywhere else. The way I look at it, the world can wait 2 years for another 40-story smoked glass high-rise.
Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love.
I don't know if you'll remember me, but I'll never forget you. I'm Mr. Signorelli's daughter. I didn't think about what would happen if he went into cardiac arrest. I didn't realize that at 6 a.m., a nurse would call the shots and save his life.
If you have the smarts and the guts to study biology, chemistry, anatomy, and psychology, call 1-800-962-NURSE. If caring were enough, anyone could be a nurse.
Hello, I'm Alan Schnorman. You're watching Lawline. Today we have Raoul Felder, and the topic is celebrity divorce. Raoul, I asked you before the break, what is it like to be the attorney to the celebrities, and are you on call 24 hours a day?
Well, the answer is we represent other people too. We represent school teachers, all kinds of people. We have a lot of celebrity clients. But the answer to that is we are on call 24 hours a day. Our number is 24 hours. I take calls in the middle of the night. It's screened, so it's only when it's necessary. And it goes with the territory. Older lawyer said to me, she said she would never take calls in the middle of the night. And I thought, she's in the wrong business then. It's like you're a pediatrician. It just goes with the territory. You have no choice.
That's a fight going on, or a visitation issue, or a custody issue?
We used to say history is always made on Friday night. I mean, that's always when things start popping, Friday nights for some reason.
Now, I know you've represented a lot of people in paternity cases. I know
Yes.
you're involved in the Tom Jones case, the Mike Tyson paternity case, as well as representing Robin Gibbons.
Two different people. In other words, so I represent his wife, but also a lady who had a baby by him.
J.J. Cool, the rap singer?
Yeah, Cool J. LL Cool J. Yeah.
What's so unique about the paternity cases?
Well, what's unique is very odd. When I started practicing law, we were flooded with paternity cases. In fact, they used to have a day in court they'd call Father's Day. And then they disappeared. Between the pill and legalized abortion, you never had any paternity case. Now we're swamped with them again. What's the new wrinkle is that they have these HLA tests where it could point the finger. The old tests were exclusionary. We even have DNA. But even so, you have in the Tom Jones case, well, I had to try the case. I won the case, I had to try it, although the HLA came back overwhelming. It comes back like...
Let's discuss that. HLA means that they can say you are the parent.
Yes. It could point a finger. It could point a finger. It says with 99% certainty you are the father. And as a matter of fact, in that case, they produced a professor that showed that 36,000 white males in America could have been the father of this child. And I asked him one question, and everybody laughed at him, and that was the end. The question I asked him, I said, but do you have any evidence that any one of these 36,000 white males were not in Pittsburgh that night rather than in room 805 of the Essex house? And of course, that's the key. But you see, when you're dealing with such broad people, broad statistics, 1/100% could be 10,000 people.
Raoul, you have migrated to the top of the matrimonial bar. I know you're head of a firm of 9 attorneys who basically specialize in matrimonial
that's
law.
about all we do.
I've seen your Rolls Royce with your name on it.
Yes.
Tell me a little about Raoul Felder. Where did you grow up?
Williamsburg, not Virginia, Brooklyn. And
Modest begins?
Well, there was nobody in Modest there. There was nothing. Churchill once said about Bevan, he said he was a modest man with a lot to be modest about. Well, everybody had a lot to be modest about at Williamsburg. There was nothing else was there.
When did you decide I'm going to be a matrimonial attorney, and how did it come about?
What happened was this: before I went to law school, I went to medical school. Then I go to law school, and then I work in the government Department of Justice, and I was offered a case, songwriter. We began trying the case, and I was offered I guess $5,000, which was lots of money in those days. And it was a terrible case. At any rate, it turned out the best man at the wedding was the boyfriend of the bride, who had been a singer. And so the Daily News that used to cover these things in those days had a headline, "Best Man Kisses and Tells." Well, in those days, we talk about 1963, early 1963, divorce law, it's not true today, was to law what proctology is to medicine. Nobody wanted to bother with that. And every lawyer had in his kit bag some divorce case. So right off, I was a pretty good trial lawyer in the government, so I dealt with hundreds of lawyers in the 3 years. So I started getting calls, "Hey, I didn't know you want divorce cases. I have this old dog of a case," so forth. Now, of course, this is not true today. Divorce law is very respected. The large firms are going into the business. We're family lawyers and so forth, but not in those days. And so I was swamped the first year in business. I was literally swamped with divorce cases.
Did you ever feel that it's just a bit much, the being on notice 24 hours a day and only handling?
No. For one thing is, if you're going to do it, you have to do it right, and there's no way you could do it by remote control or anything like that. I have 9 lawyers, but I'm involved in every case in the office. And unless you're prepared to do it, if there's any young lawyer out there thinking of, unless you're prepared to do this, don't get into it. Go into corporate law, go into environmental law, go work for the government. But if you're not prepared to work, really be on call 24 hours a day. If you're not prepared to agonize with people, if you're not prepared to work and not get paid, go into some other area.
Is there something about an attorney who specializes in matrimonial law that's different than a commercial lawyer?
Well, I mean, it's the emotional involvement to some degree. Now, if I had my druthers, if I had to do it all over again, I would go into any other kind of law or be an interior decorator. I mean, I just would not, I would not do this. It's not worth it. I've never taken a vacation and doing this 33 years. I've never taken a vacation in 33 years. You simply can't do it. Things pop up. You have responsibility to clients, and it's not the right thing to do.
So certainly those attorneys out there who think they want to be matrimonial lawyers,
To try something else. It's only for the Disraeli said about societies, for the few and the very few.
what's your advice to those attorneys, or those matrimonial attorneys out there who are trying cases? What's your advice to them? What's the best way to represent their clients?
First of all, every trial is a defeat. It means somebody was unable to do their job. And anybody, and now we're talking, that's as far as lawyers are concerned. As far as litigants are concerned, why in the world would you want some stranger, third party, who really doesn't care about you on an emotional level, on a personal level, decide your fate forever and ever? We know this. Maybe the public doesn't know. There are good judges and bad judges. There are judges that care about what they do. Judges don't care what they do. Take Russian roulette today. And today when you get a judge, you're stuck with a judge. New York County, we have some very good judges. Not 100% good judges, but most of the judges are very good judges. And so, in that sense, it's defeat and a sense of recklessness. Now, sometimes you can't help it. They blame the lawyers. You know, Alan, that's a bum rap. It's the clients. Clients have some emotional agenda. Every once in a while, you'll get a wacky lawyer who has to try a case, for his own problem. We don't weed out the people. Some people in our divorce practice or family law are needy people, emotionally needy people. They need the strife, they need the strong, they need all this hostility. They need to be in the guard business. Most lawyers are not. Most lawyers are overworked and underpaid, and they're working hard, and they're going crazy for their clients, and are really emotionally involved and feel terrible if they lose a case.
So from the moment you get a case, you try to resolve the case.
You try to, first of all, work it up properly, because that's half the trick in resolution. Know what you're doing to work up a case, and then you try to settle it.
Let me give you an example.
Yes.
A woman comes to you and says, listen, I've been married for 26
Yes.
years. My husband's got his own business. He makes hangers, but he makes a lot of them.
Yes.
He's got plants in 3 different states, and I know he's doing real estate all across the country, but they're in different names.
Right.
I really don't know what he makes. How do you go about finding out about something
Today
like
you have sophisticated discovery proceedings. You're going to need experts here.
that? And she finally says, and I have no money.
Well,
He's got all the money.
This is part of the problem, but we were successful in this department, and for the first time, in a certain case, getting the appellate division to appoint a court-appointed expert. It's very helpful because the court orders money to be paid, and they go in with the imprimatur of the court. They're able to do things.
The impartiality.
Yeah, and their power of the court, because the husband, it's always the husband who's doing these things and hiding the money in businesses. The husband knows that the court-appointed appraiser could pick up the phone and call the judge. And so that was a major breakthrough. It wasn't a great stroke of originality on my part. I saw they did it in other states, and I attempted it, and the appellate division said, good. So now we have that case on the books, and the courts can, and that's one big step here.
Well, then you get an expert and you evaluate the businessman.
Yeah.
Well, let's go into the celebrity status.
Yes.
Now the person comes to you and says that, my wife, my husband is a celebrity, and although we don't have much money, she makes a lot of money, or he makes a lot of money, and we spend it.
Well, look, Yes.
Does that spouse, the
Yes.
non-celebrity spouse,
Yes.
have a right to say, well, that celebrity spouse status is worth $1 million and I want $500,000?
Unfortunately, by virtue of a case I lost in the appellate courts, that spouse does have the right to say that celebrity status gives an enhanced earning capacity, which is, of course, ridiculous in many cases.
And then I have a portion of it. I'm
Yeah,
entitled
yes.
to X number of dollars of the
What
celebrity
happened is
status.
everybody assumed that was going to be the law. I didn't assume it, and I tested the question in the lower court, and I won. A case involving opposite. It then went up on appeal, and I lost on appeal. And apparently the tendency of the law is to ever broaden this thing. It's broadened to some degrees to ridiculous areas. For instance, you're a lawyer. What can you do with your practice? You can't eat it, you can't sell it, you can't give it away, so forth. You're a lawyer. The people come to you because you're you. Yet, if your wife is divorcing you, if you're that unfortunate, an expert will come in and say your practice is worth whatever. In fact, you'll have two experts. Your expert will say it's worth nothing. Your wife's expert will say it's worth $10 million. When in the real world, we know it's zero. So there's no value at all. And yet they put a value on that, you see. So there are problems. The pendulum has gone the other way.
What's your advice to men and women who are out there who are contemplating divorce?
Premarital agreement, prenuptial agreements.
Oh, that's before that's before they get married.
Well,
but now
they're married.
But now they're married. They've been married for 8 years, and he's unhappy or she's unhappy. What's their advice?
First, talk to each other. You go to the priest, a rabbi, whatever. The lawyer is the last stop, because part of the problem is that lawyers' first duty.
They've been through that. They've been through that. He's been through that.
And where are they now? At the
What
lawyer's office?
protection can they do? What do they have to do? Does she write down that? Does she get the tax returns?
Well, let's assume we're talking about the woman. Knowledge is power in these cases. She should have as much information as she gets. She should have tax returns, financial statements, loan applications, stuff like that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, the show goes too quickly. You're with Raoul Felder, and I'm Alan Schnorman, your host, and you're watching Lawline. See you next time.
You have been watching Lawline with your host, New York trial attorney, author and lecturer, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman will be back with you next week at the same time. If you have any questions or comments about this week's program, please write to Lawline, 27th floor, 63 Wall Street, New York, New York, 10005.